Hi YouTube, Darth here. This is Yes or No, a weapon review series where I give a clear and concise answer as to what weapons you should be using in Battlefield 4. Today's weapon is the SAR-21, a slow-firing bullpup assault rifle for which I had quite a number of requests. So should you be using the SAR-21? Yes or no? Yes. And the SAR-21, despite its slow rate of fire, has some very attractive features that make it worth using. So let's go over those features now. The SAR-21 has some of the lowest recoil in the game at .18 up and .145 left and right. The upwards recoil per shot is actually the least in the game among the automatic weapons. The first shot recoil multiplier is more typical at 1.8 times, and the low rate of fire also helps in the recoil department. What this translates to is one of the easiest, if not the easiest, to control weapon in the game. At 650 meters per second, the bullet velocity of the SAR-21 is one of the highest among the automatics and is only just behind the AUG A3. Another nice feature of the SAR-21, the velocity really gives it the ability to hang enemies out to dry at long range. Combined with its maximum range of 975 meters, and you've got a weapon that can reach out to snipers and DMR players. As a bullpup weapon, the SAR-21 has some distinct advantages and disadvantages. The starting spread is somewhat higher, but it has better on-the-move performance, which you're really going to need with the SAR-21 up close. Paired with a few other select attachments, the SAR-21 becomes quite powerful at hipfire. The weapon has the second lowest spread increase per shot in the game at .078 degrees per shot. Only the U-100 is better, though at .078 the SAR-21 does tie with a few other weapons. Combined with all the advantages I've already talked about, this essentially means that you can take long bursts with this weapon and still come up with your target. There's a ton of great features on the SAR-21 that make it a wonderful performer at long range. Essentially, you're shooting a laser. But there is at least one disadvantage that you want to be aware of. Though its low rate of fire is actually a bit of an advantage for accuracy, it doesn't help the weapon when it comes to pure damage output. The minimum time for the SAR-21 to take down a target is 402 milliseconds. This is the slowest killing rifle among the assault rifles, and among the automatics it's very nearly the slowest. That's a pretty big disadvantage, particularly if enemies are pressing you or you're trying to play very aggressively. That's pretty much the only major drawback. The weapon actually has a lot of advantages for its given role and not a lot of drawbacks. Even as a bullpup, the weapon reload speeds are surprisingly fast at 2.3 seconds for the short and 3.4 seconds for the full empty. It's not designed to be powerful at short range, instead giving up that range for the long game instead. And even if it doesn't have a lot of damage output, it gets a lot more of that damage on target. I think this might be the easiest to control weapon in the game, at least among the assault rifles and perhaps the automatics. The recoil pattern of the SAR-21 is .18 up and an even spread of .145 right and .145 left. The first shot recoil multiplier of the weapon is only 1.8. So after an initial hiccup, this weapon is going to go straight up. There's a bit of deviation as time goes on, but again, it's not very significant. Easily enough, to counter this recoil, you'll want to pull straight down. There really isn't much to countering this weapon's extremely weak recoil. If you're interested in burst firing the weapon, it requires at least 5 bullets to kill your target, and when you're firing this weapon at range, it's going to take quite a few more. Worry not though, as the SAR-21 still has one of the lowest spread increases per shot. Despite its ease of control, the SAR-21 is not a powerhouse weapon. It has some serious shortcomings in close quarters battles that must be considered first and foremost. As a bullpup weapon, it does gain quite an advantage to hipfire, and I highly recommend you take advantage of this feature. My general rule for hipfire is that if the enemy is closer than 10 meters, I use the hipfire of the weapon. Keep in mind that if you're moving while doing this, the spread does get a bit more unpredictable than usual, and I've had a few cases with the SAR-21 where I've been completely mystified as to how none of my bullets managed to hit my target at close range. So the reason you're going to need that extra time at close range is because the SAR-21 is, on average, a full 100 milliseconds slower at killing. But you can make up this difference by not having to draw your weapon to your sights. It generally takes around 200 milliseconds to draw to sights, so this is a huge savings for the SAR-21 that it needs desperately. However, this only gets you on par with other weapons and only when they aim down sights. You'll still generally lose to shotguns and CQB weapons at close range. So I highly recommend bringing a close quarters powerhouse secondary like the G18 or Shorty. These two weapons have more than enough killing power to put down anybody who gets into your personal space, which actually happens quite a bit with the SAR-21. And this is because those long-lasting, slow-killing bursts tend to put you on the minimap quite a bit more frequently and for more time. So definitely get ready to swap if you feel threatened. Next, and most obviously, it's very advantageous to take long-range shots on this weapon. The SAR-21 is exceptionally capable at long range beyond 40 meters, and many shots that you might not hit with other weapons you'll find land with the SAR-21. Now keep in mind, if you're shooting at a target that is close to cover, they have plenty of time to get behind that cover. Essentially, you'll just be making them mad. Finally, only bring out the SAR-21 on maps where it makes sense. On a close quarters map like Pearl Market, you're really only just signing yourself up for a bad time since the weapon is finely tuned for the long range game. Maps like Caspian Border, Firestorm, and Golmud play perfectly for the SAR-21. Low rate of fire weapons are not something I typically use, so I did a bit of research on the SAR-21. Doing my usual cross-referencing of BF4stats.com leaderboards with Battlelog, I found that the top users of the SAR-21 tended to prefer a bit of a varied set of attachments. Some like short-range scopes and others long. It really was all over the place, and I'm honestly not surprised that a lot of these players had lower scores per minute, as it's suggestive of a weapon whose strength is long range away from the objectives. But you don't have to play that way. For my optic, I did something I never do and went for a longer range scope. I threw on the ACOG sight and I never looked back. Because of its low recoil and negligible first shot recoil multiplier, the 4x ACOG works wonders on the SAR-21. There was a very short learning curve, as I had to get used to never ever use my aiming down sights at closer ranges, but the ACOG is absolutely a great choice for getting the edge on the SAR-21's best engagement ranges. Next, my laser sight of choice, my accessory of choice, was the laser sight. Usually I recommend turning off the laser sight whenever you don't need it, but the laser sight is pretty critical to the hipfire performance of the SAR-21 when you really need it. I found myself leaving the laser on, even when I might not normally, as I shot down range. Why? Because a lot of times enemies might come looking for me after that prolonged minimap exposure, and I needed maximum hipfire potential right away. Now for the barrel, I think it only makes sense to pair such a low rate of fire weapon with the heavy barrel. It pairs particularly well on the SAR-21 because of the low recoil. You'll need to get accustomed to that initial hiccup, especially with the 4x optic. But once you do, you'll find that the heavy barrel is an exceptional pairing with this long-range weapon. Finally, for the underbarrel, I went with the vertical grip. You could also use the ergo grip, as they serve the same function. The weapon is accurate enough as is, and the vertical grip in concert with the laser and bullpup design make the SAR-21 exceptionally effective at hip fire. It makes up for the number one shortcoming of this weapon in CQB in a way that feels just so right, particularly if you're adept at knowing when to use hip fire and when to aim down sights. The SAR-21 is probably one of my favorite weapons that I've played with during this series. It performs well in its designed range and feels very different from other weapons. It's not a weapon I went to very often before recording the footage for this episode, but I think I'll find myself using it more afterwards. It's exceptionally capable on maps that call for range, and it can even hold its own in close quarters. As long as you understand that it's not good at everything and use it on the specific maps where it does well, the SAR-21 is a definite yes. Now, if you find yourself liking the SAR-21, you may also wish to consider another capable bullpup in the AUG-A3. I did a yes or no some time ago on the AUG-A3, and it trades a bit of that SAR-21 long-range power for better performance at closer distances. If these slow-firing weapons aren't your thing, you could try the AN-94, which has great long-range performance and can be used to deadly effect somewhat closer up with its 1200 round per minute burst. But keep in mind, as it is a burst weapon, you do run the risk of jamming it, especially at close range, especially firing very quickly. That's it for this episode of Yes or No. If there's something you think I missed, or if you have a particularly different take on the SAR-21, please let me know in the comments below. If there's a weapon you'd like to see reviewed on this series, leave a comment indicating which weapon. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.